All right, so here we are working on more linear equations. This was the homework I sent you the other night. Problem number 1, they want me to write the equation for each line, so 1 through 4. They just want me to come up with the equation. Remember, to write the equation of a line, you've got to know two things. You've got to have the slope for the line, and you've got to have some point. Whether that point's the y-intercept or just any random point does not matter. You just need some point. So in this case, I have slope, I have a point, so that tells me I need to start off in point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, so from here, our job is to get the right things in the right place. The m is your slope, and this will be your x1, and this will be your y1. So it's putting these things in their right places. So this becomes y minus 7 equals 5 times x minus 2. From here, we're going to rewrite it to get the y by itself. So distribute your 5. You're going to get y minus 7 equals 5x minus 10. Now you need to add that 7 to both sides, and that's going to give you the final answer of y equals 5x minus 3. Second problem, same thing. They give me a slope and they give me a point. So y minus negative 5 equals 2/5 times x minus 10. Now, these two negatives here are going to become a positive. So really, this becomes y plus 5 equals 2/5 times x minus 10. We distribute the 2/5. That's going to give us y plus 5 equals 2/5 x. 2/5 times 10, that's going to give us 4. So minus 4. Subtract 5 from both sides, and you're going to get the final answer, y equals 2/5x minus 9. All right, number 3, slope and a point, so same story. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus negative 5 is just going to become y plus 5. My m is 0, x minus 8. Distribute your 0. Remember, 0 times anything is just 0. So y plus 5 equals 0 times x is 0, minus 0 times 8, which is 0, and 0 minus 0 is still 0. So this turns into y plus 5 equals 0. Subtract 5 from both sides, we get the final answer, y equals negative 5. All right, for number 4, so we have y minus 0 equals 5/6 times x minus negative 9 is going to become plus 9. Distribute your 5/6, so it's going to give us 5/6x plus 5 times 9 is 45/6. Y minus 0 is just y. The y is by itself. There's my answer. Now, if you took that 45/6 and you wanted to change it to a decimal, you would get 7.5. So you could write it as y equals 5/6x plus 7.5. That's the same thing. All right, part 5 through 8. Now they're wanting me to write an equation, but leave it in point-slope form and a line that goes through these 2 points. So again, to write the equation of a line, we got to figure out what's the slope and a point. They gave me 2 points, so I'm fine on the point. What I don't have is the slope. So the first thing we're going to do is find the slope, which is found using the formula y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So I'm just going to call that x1, which makes this y1. So then this becomes x2, y2. So putting these numbers in the right place, if I take y1, which is negative 2, subtract 0 on top, so negative 2 minus 1 on top, On the bottom, I'm going to have negative 5 minus 3. Well, negative 2 minus 0 is just negative 2. Negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. Negative 2 over negative 8, well, first of all, the negatives will cancel. 2 over 8 reduces to 1/4, so this turns into a positive 1/4. So that is our m. So m is 1/4. Now that I have the slope, I get to pick one of these 2 points. It does not matter which point you pick. The answers may look a little bit different, but they will in fact be the same line. So I'm just going to go with the 3 and the 0 because usually zeros makes things clean up a little bit easier. So I'm just going with this point. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So this is the point slope form. And so now it's just a matter of putting the right numbers in the right place. So if I'm using this point, I will have y minus 0 equals 1/4 x minus 3. And that would be my answer. It's in point slope form. If I had used the other point, you would just have an equation that looks like y minus negative 2 is going to become y plus 2. The slope stays the same. And then we would have x minus negative 5, which is just x plus 5. So one or the other. Both of those are correct answers. All right, number 6. Same thing, I need to figure out the slope first. So I'm going to go negative 4 minus negative 9 becomes negative 4 plus 9. Then 6 minus 1. Negative 4 plus 9, that turns into positive 5. 6 minus 1, positive 5. 5 over 5 is just 1. So my slope is 1. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, if I go with the first point, we're going to have y minus negative 4 or y plus 4 equals m, which is 1 times x minus 6. If you use the other point, you would have y minus negative 9, which is y plus 9, equals 1 times x minus 1. So this or this would be a correct answer. All right, number 7, my slope would be 2 minus 11 over negative 4 minus 8. To take away 11 is going to be negative, 9 over negative 12. Negatives are going to cancel, so it's going to become a positive. 9 over 12 reduces by a factor of 3. So this turns into a positive 3 over 4. So that is my slope, 3/4. All right, if I go with the first point, we're going to have y minus 2 equals 3/4 times x minus negative 4, which is x plus 4. Or, using this point, you would have y minus 11 equals 3/4 times x minus 8. So this one or this one would be my final answer. All right, number 8, my slope, 6 minus 5 over 0 minus 3. 6 minus 5 is 1. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that's just a negative 1/3. All right, so we would have y minus 6 equals negative 1/3 x minus 0. Or y minus 5 equals negative 1/3 x minus 3. Okay, problems 9 through 10. They want me to take and put the equation in standard form. Remember, standard form looks like ax plus by equals c. There's a couple of conditions that have to be met before we can say it's in standard form. The first thing, a has to be positive. So that's what this means. A is greater than or equal to 1. That means your A has to be positive. The second thing, your A, your B, and your C have to be whole numbers. In other words, no fractions, no decimals. So we can't have fractions or decimals to be in standard form. And then part 3, the A, the B, and the C have to have a GCF of 1. What that means is if you look at the A, the B, and the C, and there is a number that will divide into all 3 of those, we have to divide it by that number so that it has a GCF of 1. So let's take a look at number 9. First thing I'm going to always do is make sure that each term is in the right place. So I need the X and the Y on the left side with the X up front, and then the constant on the right side of the equals. So I need to subtract this 3 over 7x from both sides to get the x on the correct side. So if we have nothing but we take away 3/7 x, that's going to give me the new equation of a negative 3 over 7x. That's a positive y, so plus y equals positive 1/2. All right, so I've got my stuff in the right place. Problem I have now is, first of all, my A is negative. It needs to be positive. And the A, the B, and the C have to all be whole numbers. The A is a fraction and the C is a fraction. That can't happen in it being standard form. So we have to clear these fractions. So look at the denominator. You've got a 7 and you have a 2. So we're looking for a number that 7 and 2 both divide into. And that number is 14. So I'm going to multiply everything by 14. But don't forget, we also have to clear out this negative. So not 14, but negative 14. That's going to clear the fractions and take care of the negative with my A. So everything is multiplied by a negative 14. So what's that going to do for me here? We're going to take negative 14, multiply it by negative 3. So negative 14 times negative 3 is going to give me a positive 42 over 7. Minus 14y equals negative 14 over 2. We still have fractions, but look at the fractions that we have. Take the denominator and divide it into the numerator. 7 into 42. Well, that's going to turn into 6x. This is already a whole number, so it just stays minus 14y. 2 into negative 14, well, that's negative 7. So we get 6x minus 14y equals negative 7, and that is the standard form of the equation. All right, number 10, similar, but instead of fractions, I have decimals. But again, the first thing I'm going to do is put everything in the right place. So I want my x over here, so we're going to subtract that from both sides. That's going to give you a negative 4.3x plus y equals negative 5.7. So here I have decimals, so I've got to clear those decimals. We clear decimals by multiplying, in this case, by 10, because I just want to move the decimal one place to the right. So everything here gets multiplied by 10. So that's going to give me a new equation that's going to be, oh, forgot something. There's a negative with my A. So let's take care of that at the same time, and so instead of multiplying by 10, let's multiply by negative 10. So negative 10 times negative 4.3x just turns into 43x. Negative 10 times y is just negative 10y. Negative 10 times negative 5.7 is just a positive 57. 43, 10, 57, there's nothing that divides into those other than 1, so there is no GCF other than 1. So this is my final answer. All right. Number 11, instruction says to graph each equation, then name the slope and the intercepts. So we want the x and the y intercepts. Okay, so to find the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0 and solve the equation. To find the y-intercept, we can set the x equal to 0 and just solve the equation. So I'm going to start with the x-intercept. So I'm taking the given equation and I'm writing it just like it is, except for y, I'm plugging in a 0. So this turns into 2x plus 5 times 0 equals 10. We work this out to get the x by itself. Well, 5 times 0 is just 0. 2x plus 0 is just 2x. Bring down the equals 10. Now we divide both sides by 2 and we get x equals 5. So the answer is 5, 0. Remember, the x-intercept is a point, so you want to write your answer as an ordered pair, which in this case is 5, 0. Similar story for the y-intercept, except now we're going to take and replace the x with 0. So your equation becomes 2 times 0 plus 5y equals 10. Well, 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 5y is just 5y equals 10. Divide both sides by 5, we get y equals 2. But just like we wrote the x-intercept as a point, we're going to write the y-intercept as a point, and that will be in the form of 0, 2. All right, so I have named the intercepts. I'm going to go ahead and plot those. 5, 0 is right here. 0, 2 is right here. So I have my 2 points, so I can go ahead and connect those to get my line. So connecting these 2 dots, we get a line that looks like that. Okay, so I've done everything except tell the slope. Remember, slope is rise over run. So we have 2 options here. We could take this equation and rewrite it to get the y by itself, but that's a lot of work. If I look at my line, I've got everything I need right here to write the slope. First of all, is the slope positive or negative? Well, since my line is going down left to right, it's a negative slope. Also remember, slope is rise over run, where I figure out how far up and how far over to go from one point to the next. Since I already figured out that the slope is negative, I'm going to say m equals negative rise over run. So I got to figure out how far up or down. So to go from one point to the next, I have to go up 1, 2. So my rise is 2. Then I have to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my run is 5. So we get the slope negative 2 over 5. Got my intercepts, got my slope, got my graph. Everything's done. All right, number 12, similar story. So for the x-intercept, remember, x-intercept's at the y equal to 0. So you're going to have negative 3x plus minus negative 3x minus. Not that it's really going to matter because it's going to cancel out to a 0. But just to be on the safe side, negative 3x minus 2 times 0 equals negative 6. Well, 2 times 0 is just 0. Take something, subtract 0, you just get that something back. So negative 3x equals negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 3, we get x equals positive 2. So we have the point 2, 0. Similar story for the y-intercept. So we're going to have negative 3 times 0, because you replace the x with 0, minus 2y equals negative 6. All right, so this whole thing is going to turn into 0. 0 take away 2y is negative 2y equals negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 2, we get y equals 3. So we have the ordered pair 0, positive 3. So here are my intercepts. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put those on the graph. So 2, 0 is here, over 2. 0, 3 is here. Again, connect our lines. Once again, my line is going down, so my slope is going to be negative. So now I just got to figure out what's the rise, what's the run. So rise, I have to go up, what's that, 3? And then run, I have to go over 2. So rise 3 over run 2, get a slope of negative 3 over 2. Okay, number 13. So now they're wanting me to write the equation of a line through the specified point, with some added conditions that it must be parallel or perpendicular, depending on the case, to another line. So what we're going to do first is figure out what's the slope I'm supposed to be using. So first things first, what m should I be using? Well, we talked about in class, if two lines are parallel, then the slopes have to be equal. So parallel lines means equal slopes. So I look at the line they gave me, y equals 2/3 x minus 7, and I recognize, okay, this is the slope of the line they gave me. Well, my lines are parallel, so that means my other slope, the one I'm going to use, has to be the same. So I will also be using a slope of 2/3. Now that I have the slope, I use the point they gave me, and we go into point slope form. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So taking this information and putting it in the right places here. So this turns into y minus negative 2 is going to become y plus 2 equals 2/3 x minus 2. Okay, now we've got to get the equation in slope-intercept form, because they did not say leave it in point-slope form. So we're going to distribute the 2/3. That's going to give us y plus 2 equals 2/3x minus 4/3. All right, 4/3. Just a fraction. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times, again, think of that as 2/1, right? 3 times 1 is 3, so 4/3. All right, where the problem is going to happen is where I have to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm trying to subtract 2 from a negative 4/3. So let's look at how that happens. Negative 4/3 minus 2. Before you can add or subtract fractions, you've got to have the same denominator. So if we think of this as 2/1, I still have the problem of not having the same denominator. This is a 3, this is a 1. So these have to be rewritten to have both a denominator of, in this case, 3. So both denominators are 3. The way I do the conversion, this is very straightforward, but the way you can think about it is, this was the old denominator, this is the new one. How many times does 3 go into 3? 1. So we take that value, 1, and multiply it by the old numerator. So negative 4 times 1 is just negative 4. So, makes sense? The new denominator is 3. The old one was 3, so nothing's really going to change. If we look at the process with this one, how many times does 1 go into 3? 3 times. Take 3, multiply it by 2, we get 6. So we get 6 over 3. So now I can subtract these two fractions. Negative 4/3 minus 6/3 turns into a negative 10/3. So when I subtract a negative 4/3 minus 2, really that's negative 4/3 minus 6/3, which just turns into negative 10/3. So this ends up giving me the equation y equals 2 over 3x minus 10 over 3. All right, number 14, same thing. My lines have to be parallel, so my slope has to be the same as the slope of this line. But I've got a small problem. This equation is not in the right form. To determine the slope of this line, it has to be in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So we have to rewrite this to put it in slope-intercept form. To do that, you're going to subtract the 4x first to get negative 3y equals negative 4x minus 8. Divide everything by negative 3. That's going to give you y equals positive 4/3 x plus 8 over 3. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is the slope. I don't care that this is a fraction. That makes no difference. I want to know what's the slope of this line. This has a slope of 4/3. Since my lines have to be parallel, the slope I'm going to use has to be the same. So I will also use the slope of 4/3. Now we're ready to put it back in point slope form. So we would have y minus negative 2, which is y plus 2, equals 4/3, x minus 3, which becomes x minus negative 3, which is x plus 3. Distribute your 4/3, you get y plus 2 equals 4 over 3x plus 12 over 3. Well, this is a pretty easy fraction to fix. 12 over 3 is just 4. So really this turns into y plus 2 equals 4 over 3x plus 4. Subtract the 2 from both sides, we get the final answer, y equals 4 over 3x plus 2. All right, number 15, only thing different is that now my lines have to be perpendicular. So remember, if two lines are perpendicular, their slopes are opposite and flipped. So just like before, the first thing I got to do is figure out what slope should I be using. I'm going to determine that using this equation, but once again, it's in the wrong form. So I need to put it in the form y equals mx plus b. So first step, subtract that 3x from both sides. The negative y is going to drop down, put the negative 3x up front. That's a positive or plus 2. This says negative y. We don't want negative y. We want positive y. So you're basically going to multiply everything by negative 1 just to flip all the signs. So that negative y becomes a positive y. That negative 3x becomes a positive 3x. That plus 2 becomes a minus 2. What's the slope of this line? Positive 3. My lines are perpendicular. So I'm going to take that positive 3, think of it as 3 over 1. Flip it. You're going to get a 1 over 3. It's positive. The other one has to be negative. So negative 1 over 3 is the slope I will use. All right, now we're ready to put it into point slope form. So we would have y minus negative 4, which is y plus 4, equals negative 1/3 x minus 1. Distribute your negative 1/3, you get y plus 4 equals negative 1 over 3x plus 1/3. We've got to subtract 4. Oh, we got that problem again where I'm trying to subtract a fraction and a whole number. So again, off to the side over here, I have a positive 1/3 and I'm trying to subtract a 4. But again, think of it like 4 over 1. Cannot subtract them like they are because they've got different denominators. So we need a common denominator, something that both 1 and 3 will divide into. That is 3. So we're back to the common denominator of 3. Once again, this is not going to change, so it's going to stay as a 1/3. However, 1 to 3 here. Well, 1 into 3 is 3. 3 times 4, 12. So 12 over 3 is the same as 4 over 1. Now we subtract these, you're going to get a negative 11 over 3. So 1/3 minus 4 turns into negative 11 thirds. So this turns into y equals negative 1/3 x minus 11 thirds. That is your final answer. All right, number 16. What slope should I use? My lines have to be perpendicular, so it's got to be opposite and flipped of the slope of this line. So we're going to rewrite this, subtract that x, we're going to get 5y equals negative 2x minus 20. Divide everything by 5, we get y equals negative 2/5 x minus 4. So what's the slope of this line? Negative 2/5. What's the opposite and flipped version of this? Well, that's going to be a positive 5 over 2. So that's the slope I should use, 5 over 2. All right, from here, we're ready to put it in point slope form. So we are going to have y minus 3 equals 5 over 2, x minus negative 5 or x plus 5. Distribute your 5 halves. We're going to have y minus 3 equals 5 over 2x plus 25 over 2. We got to add 3 to both sides. Similar problem, adding 3 to a 25 over 2. So we'll take care of that right down here. So 25 over 2 plus 3 over 1. We're going to transform that. So 2 and 1, common denominator is going to be 2. That did not change, so the top's not going to change. 1 into 2, well, that's 2. 2 times 3, 6. So 3 over 1 is the same as 6 over 2. 25 plus 6 is going to give us 31 over 2. So 25 over 2 plus 3 is the same as 31 over 2. So that gives me the final answer. Y equals 5 over 2x plus 31 over 2.